What is up, YouTube? Today I'm coming back at you with another video, and today is another review video. And this is of a product that I have been super excited about reviewing for ever since I got it, ever since I learned of its existence. I know I haven't made a review in a while. You know, the quarantine and all that stuff has really been making a pretty big impact on my life, so I haven't really had a whole lot of time to do something like this. But I did want to get around to this. So, ever since the quarantine, I have been looking at VR headsets, and so if you've checked out the title, you know what I'm reviewing today, and I'm reviewing the Oculus Quest virtual reality headset. So before we actually get into the review, I want to talk a little bit about my history with virtual reality. It's not very long, so don't worry. Like I said, I haven't really had a whole lot of experiences with virtual reality. I've had a couple here and there throughout my life, and most of them actually being in my early life, in the early 2000s, is when I really became interested in it. So I would say the first time I ever had anything like virtual reality, use that term very loosely in this case, is in like 2000, 2001, one of my cousins got a headset game thing. I don't even know what it was called. I only got to use it once when he first got it, and he never let me try it out again, and I don't think he really played it that often. It was a virtual reality style headset. It was standalone, and you had these two accelerometers that you strapped with Velcro around your hands, and it was like a boxing game. And it wasn't so much virtual reality, but it reminded me more of like the Virtual Boy, where mixed with like a Game & Watch, where like the boxer would be able to move to these set locations, and the LEDs would just light up, and when it was in certain locations, you could try to punch and you could try to block, and using these accelerometers. It was a very basic thing, but I was fascinated by it as a kid, and only ever got to play it once. That was the real first time I ever had anything like that. The second time was when I first encountered this arcade machine. Now, I've done a little bit of research for this video about that arcade machine, so I know what it was called and stuff. And it was a company called, I think, Vortex, and they made a bunch of different VR arcade machines, and I only really played the same one. I saw it at two different places, and it was the exact same game. It was like called Storming the Beach or something like that. And it looked like a normal arcade cabinet with a big screen, and you could see what was going on in the headset, but it also had this big arm that came over top, and it had this virtual reality headset, and you could pull it down to fit whatever height you were. And it only had 3 degrees of freedom, so it wasn't like you could move forward and backwards and stuff. And it was stuck stationary on this post. And it was this big yellow virtual reality headset, probably about 8 inches thick. And it had 2 controllers mounted right next to the sides of the actual screen itself, like this. So you'd be turning like this, and I only had one button on each little handle there, and you basically took control of like a turret, like a World War II style turret, and you're basically fighting off invading forces on a beach, and you would just shoot at planes and ships and people. And that was the entire purpose of the game. And I loved that game. I maybe played it about 4 or 5 times. I didn't really get to play it a whole lot, just because it was such an expensive arcade game. It cost anywhere from like $1 per play to $1.50 per play, depending on the place. And it was always super expensive to play, but it was one of my favorite arcade games as a kid. And that's really what made me want something like that in person, because it was a very unique experience at the time, 2003-ish, I would say. And that was the only ever time I really had anything experience with virtual reality. I remember reading about the original Oculus Rift and all that and following the news, but I never really got into it because it was so expensive. But that brings us to today, and that is the Oculus Quest. So I picked this up because of quarantine, and there's some games that I've always wanted to try in virtual reality, one of the main ones being VR Chat. I always wanted to try that game out because it looked like a lot of fun. I like social MMOs, and so I've always been interested in that because I love the sort of the tracking, and like you can move your hands move in the game. It's really cool, and so I've always been interested in that. I've also been interested in like some of the VR shooters out there, and just some of the other VR experiences. So I picked this up. This is the headset. You can pick this up for about $400 for this version, which is the 64 gig version, or you can spend a little bit more. You can spend 500 more, not 500 more. You can spend $500 and get the 128 gig version of this. All right, so let's go over a little bit of it. I'll go over a little bit about its features and what the build quality is, and some of my opinions on like the fit and finish of it, and how it feels using it. And then we'll jump into a game, and I'll do the experience of using it. So let's go over a little bit of the construction. So you have this plastic front. It doesn't really attract very many fingerprints. It's a nice matte black plastic. It looks really nice and professional. Has the Oculus branding right there. You've got 4 cameras, 2 up top on a sort of diagonal angle, and then 2 facing more towards the bottom. These 2 bottom ones are your pretty much main ones, and these 2 are just for tracking over the head and reaching out in front of you a little bit more. And these 2 bottom ones are pretty much your main ones, I would assume. You have this fabric wrap around the top, which makes it feel very cool. I really like the fabric wrap build. You've got this foam, this thick foam face padding. You've got a rubber head strap, and you've got 2 lenses in there. I don't want to point them at the sun for too long, but there's 2 lenses in there. And now, being a photographer, obviously I'm filming with a nice photography camera. These lenses are very strange. I've never seen anything quite like that in terms of photography. They've got these spherical lines going around there, so they're not like, it's not, camera lenses have a spherical elements in it, and they're really nice and smooth and clear. These are like ridges inside of the lens. I'm sure that has something to do with maybe sharpness, I would assume, but I like sort of like a anti-aliasing filter sort of built into the lens, maybe. That's all I can really think of, which makes sense because you're staring at a screen from about 4 inches away. But I don't know, it's kind of strange. I've never seen a lens like that. You've got IPD slider on the bottom here, and that is to set the distance of your eyes. This goes anywhere from like, I think the 70s to like 60 or somewhere. I know it's got a pretty large range. My IPD is 63. It's slightly more narrow, just ever so slightly more narrow than the average. So I set that up correctly. You've got some volume controls on the bottom here, and that's pretty much the headset. Now, some of the things going into buying this that I heard was it's very front heavy, and I heard it at every review of how front heavy this headset is. And when I bought it, I knew it was going to be, but I expected it to feel like there was a brick attached to the front of my face. It's really not that heavy, especially if you wear the strap correctly. And now that's one thing that I see in a lot of reviews, saying how uncomfortable the strap is and how front heavy it is and how much it pushes on your face and stuff. I think a lot of the issue is people don't fit this strap correctly. Now, at first I was having the same issues. I felt really front heavy, it hurt my face, hurt the back of my head. And then I saw some videos about how to properly fit this, and it's so much more comfortable now. And I really can play this for hours, pretty much until the battery dies. And the main reason is you really, really have to adjust this. So when you get this out, this top strap, this is really the key strap here, is like pulled all the way in. You want to loosen that up almost all the way. I don't have a very large head, and if I have to loosen it this much, then you're probably going to have to loosen it just as much. You're going to want to loosen up way more than you want, way more than you think. This does pivot, so you don't have to worry about it fitting towards your eyes, but you want to loosen up as much as possible. And then you want this back part to go around the bottom of just around the base of your skull, and right where it attaches to the back of your neck. You want it to like cup. So you want the back of your skull to kind of fit in this little area right here. And most of the weight's supposed to be fitting on that little bump on the back of your skull, right in here. And so this kind of cups the bottom of it, so most of the weight is cupped towards the back. And once you do that, it really fits perfectly, and I've had no issues since then with comfortability. Although I do wear a beanie just so it fits a little bit more snug and doesn't move around as much. I recommend that just so I feel like it makes a tighter seal when I wear like a small beanie like this. So I normally wear that when I play VR. So another thing is this is my first experience with VR controllers. So these are the Oculus Touch controllers. They are very, very interesting. When I first picked them up, I thought I would have a really hard time getting used to them. But honestly, after using them for even just a day, they're very, very intuitive. And the controls in a lot of VR games are set up very intuitively. And they're pretty universal when it comes to these controllers. So the main selector button is not any, there's two face buttons, and there's a joystick, and then there's a trigger and a grip button. And now you would think traditionally a face button would be a select button. Most often the select buttons are these triggers. So these triggers are like your main two buttons. So this is going to be what the buttons you're going to use the most, and they're very nice feeling. They're dampened very nice. Also, all these buttons have capacitive touch sensors in them, so you can actually do gestures in some games. Like VR chat, for instance, if you want to wave, you just go like this, have all your fingers off the buttons, and you'll wave. But anyway, you have these two grip buttons, which actually, in most games, that's how you grab things. So like in Arizona Sunshine, for instance, if you want to pick up a magazine, you would put your arm out, hold down this grip button, and that would pick up the magazine, and then you would just drag it to your chest, and it would add it to your inventory. And so that's sort of an instance of how the grip buttons work. The face buttons are pretty self-explanatory. They function as normal face buttons. And the two joysticks also have capacitive sensors on them, so when you're resting your thumb on them, it will know. And the joysticks are very, very, they're stiffer than a PS4 controller or an Xbox One controller, but they're not too stiff. They feel very nice, they have a good amount of resistance, and you can really make fine-tune adjustments with these joysticks, and I really, really like these controllers. They're powered by one AA each. And the battery life, I just had to change these for the first time in 2 weeks of using this VR headset almost on a daily basis. And I would play for normally 2-hour sessions, so I would say about 20 to 15 hours per AA. That's a pretty solid battery life there. So I really like those controllers. They're fairly light too, and they've got a nice grippy texture so you don't drop them. And they work really well. Alright, so that's pretty much the construction of it, and a little bit of how it feels on your face. Like I said, you don't really notice it after a while, and the biggest issue is getting that IPD correct. When I first had it set up, I would try to adjust it, and it would give me headaches when it wasn't adjusted correctly. I highly recommend getting like an app to tell you what your IPD is, or to do what I did, and I just I looked at a method where you have, actually I had somebody help me. I look off in the distance, and you have a ruler lined up. We had a ruler lined up like right at my eyes, and you measure the distance from one pupil to the other pupil as you look off into the distance, and that should give you a rough estimate in millimeters of your IPD. So like whatever millimeter total it is, that's pretty much what your IPD is. And so I got like 63, and so that's what my IPD is. I set it up, and I've not had any issues with headaches or anything since. Now when it comes to the lenses, I do want to mention one thing about the clarity, is they're very, very crisp. Dead center, you look straight off in the distance, they're perfectly crisp. It gives you a really good sense of immersion. But I do notice as you get out towards the edges, it does blur quite a bit, and there are these reflections that kind of look like lens flare. I've heard people in VR call them God rays, but they're not God rays. God rays are sun coming down from the sky with moisture in the air that create these rays of light. That's not really what's happening there. What's happening in photography terms is the same thing. They're lenses, they're glass. What's happening is the light that's coming through isn't coming through at a perfect angle. And now, I don't know what it's bouncing off of, but basically what happens is it comes through the lens, and it doesn't come through perfectly straight, so it bounces off either other lens elements or maybe even the lenses in your eye. But something's happening where the light's bouncing off parts of the lens, and it's creating these flares of light, these stray beams of light that are coming through the bouncing of the light's not perfectly focalized in your eyes. And I noticed that mostly in darker scenes. So my guess is that has something to do with those ridges on the lenses. I'm not sure what the purpose of the ridges are. Like I said, probably something to do with anti-aliasing effects. But the actual lens flares are quite prominent. If you look off to the side like that, you can see them very easily. But if you're looking straight on and it's a fairly bright scene, bright game, you don't really notice that. It's mostly just darker games that you're going to notice that. Alright, so let's put on the headset and I'll jump into a game and I'll give you what the experience is like with the tracking and the resolution and stuff. So, I'll see you back in a game.
Okay, so we're back. Here we are inside of the game. Let me stand a little bit closer. Oh, there we go. So here we are. We're back inside of the game. And as you can see, I am inside of VR chat. This is one of the games that I bought this headset for. This is a live recording from inside of the Oculus Quest headset. I'm actually using the PC link cable because the standalone Quest version does not have the capability to use the camera that is built in to VR chat. So this is one of the very few times that I'm actually using the PC version of VR chat because my PC can barely run VR chat through this headset. So one of the things that I have to do in order to record this video is use the PC version because that works with this camera. So, but I will tell you a little bit about the experience of the standalone gameplay and whatnot of this game. So right now I am seeing through the headset. You aren't seeing through the headset, this is just seeing a recording of my avatar that I'm using. But you can see right now this is the one-to-one real-time tracking of my hands through the headset. You can see here I can do different different hand gestures with my hands using the touch capacitive buttons and actually the grip buttons and whatnot. I can do all sorts of different gestures, and that's one of the cool things about these controllers. Like right now, I'm not even pressing any buttons. I just have my fingers laid on the buttons, and you can see I can do peace signs and stuff like that. And that's the same thing with the standalone games as well. That's not just the PC version. So that's a little bit of the controllers in action there. As you can see, the tracking is very good. I can track all the way, I'll look straight and I can track all the way down here, directly 180 degrees down from my face. I can track all the way up. As long as it's within your human vision, how you would normally be able to see. So like you can see right down here, you have all this range and it will track everything here perfectly fine. Now where the tracking gets a little bit more sketchy is when you start having to grab behind you. So I'll slowly try to go behind my head. And as you can see, we've lost tracking. This is actually directly behind my head, but the Quest doesn't know that because it can't see the controllers. Now when I bring my hand back around, it should snap back. And as you can see, it snapped back and regained tracking. So for the most part, you're not really going to have an issue in most games, especially in games like VR chat, because VR chat, you only ever really do, you don't really need to grab things off your back. And if you do, but if you do it quick enough, it should be able to kind of guess where your hands are. So like I'll do this, as you can see, it can kind of guess where it is. It doesn't work perfectly, but as long as you do the motion quick enough, it shouldn't lag out. Now, so the tracking I would say is really, really good for inside-out tracking. Now, like I said, the only way they could really improve it is by maybe putting a camera on the back of the head strap or something. But I don't really see them doing that for the next version because that'd probably be a little bit hard to do. But so the tracking's really good. You can wave both my hands independently very quickly, and it doesn't have any issues tracking them. And do full rotation of the wrist and the arms, and it gets that perfectly. And I can go like this, and it goes the bicep movements are good. So it's got pretty good representation tracking. You have orientation of the controllers, and you have your fingers are all tracked pretty well. And yeah, so I'll stop talking about the tracking, but the tracking is very important. That's why I spent so much time on it. So, oh, I guess I could talk about head tracking. So the head tracking is very good. It uses all the cameras. So the head tracking is probably the best tracking on this headset itself. So wherever you look is a one-to-one representation of how you're looking in whatever game. So I don't have any issues with head tracking. I don't really have any issues with the hand tracking. Only issues I ever have is when I have to grab something off my back, which is on a rare occasion in some games. But other than that, the tracking is flawless, and I would probably give it like a 9 out of 10 for tracking. Um, Now, visual quality. So you're not going to really be able to see this because I'm looking through the lenses and you're not. But in terms of screen, can I do this? Screen door effect. Um, there's really not much noticeable. If you look and you just look and you relax your eyes how you would if you were just looking through like glasses or something, you're not going to notice a screen door effect. It's I mean, if you really focus, you can tell that there's something there, but it just kind of feels more like your vision's a little bit blurry, just a little bit blurry. Things are just a little bit blurry, and that's the only um, thing when it comes to screen door effect that you can really tell. It's hardly noticeable. I very rarely notice it. Now, some people will say that uh, this is not a great VR headset because it only has 72 hertz refresh rate. Honestly, if you would not have told me that it was 72 hertz, I would have thought it was maybe even 90 hertz. I would not have been able to tell. It's very good, and I don't really have any issues. I'm sure there is a difference, but it's honestly passable. I don't get motion sick whatsoever when I'm wearing this headset, and it's a really great experience. Now, when it comes to field of view, the field of view is probably my biggest complaint. I wish it was a little bit bigger. It definitely gives you the experience of looking through some binoculars. Not cheap binoculars where you can only see like this, but it's like a high quality binoculars. So you can see like, let me try to get it. So this is pretty much the edge of my vision. So I'll move to the side so you can kind of see. This is pretty much the edge of my vision. So it's not super wide, but I think it's serviceable. It's not great, but it's not bad either. I could imagine it being a lot worse if I had to be like this. That would suck. But it's passable. But that's the one issue I really have. If they make a successor to this headset, I would love for them to have a larger field of view. It would be my biggest request. The resolution's fine to me. I wouldn't even need a bigger resolution. This is perfectly serviceable. I just want more space to look around with my actual eyeballs. Um, Now you're hearing the audio come straight through the mic of the Oculus Quest itself, so you can determine for yourself if you like the quality of that or not. It's really up to you to decide that. But yeah, that's the quality of the microphone. The headset actually has built-in speakers on the side. They are good for some things, but on other things, I would recommend headphones. So like for VR chat, you don't even need headphones. It's perfectly fine. The spatial audio in the head strap is more than serviceable. It's got audio canceling and everything, so you don't need a set of headphones for VR chat. Um, for the movie experience, something like Skybox, highly recommend headphones. A nice pair of over-the-ear headphones will do you good if you are looking to watch movies on this headset, like I do a lot. So in that instance, I would recommend some headphones. Other than that, I would say that, it does work with PC as well. Right now, I'm on the PC, so that's one of the biggest selling points for this headset. So you have your standalone apps, your standalone store, but you also have the full PC stuff. And so you can hook this up, like I have it hooked up to my PC right now. There's a cord right here, and it's plugging into my PC. My laptop sounds like it's about to explode, but it's running, it's doing it. It's what we're recording on right now. So it works perfectly fine. I don't really have any issues with the PC experience. What I do notice, and this is probably not due to the PC link itself, but this is probably due to me using a non-supported graphics card. I'm using a GTX 1050 normal, and normally that's more than enough to run games in Ultra, but VR, you're running two screens, and you're rendering things twice, and it just gets, the requirements are a lot more for VR. So it's not recommended that use a 1050, but obviously it's possible. It's not going to be a good experience. I don't use it very often, but If you really want to, you can use a 1050. I wouldn't recommend it though. But yeah, so some of the issues that you get with an unsupported graphics card is when I wave my hand fast and when I turn my head quick, you get some sort of like wavy artifacts in the edge of my vision. And like when I move my hand real fast, I get some sort of like wavy. It looks kind of like a ripple effect, like you threw a rock into a pond of water. It kind of ripples. It's a weird artifacting effect, and I'm guessing it's something to do with my graphics card being barely able to handle this. So that is one downside to Link. You will need the full graphical capabilities of a good PC to run it, but it does have that option if you do have a good PC. So would I recommend this headset? Yes, it's such a great value. If you want to play it by itself, you don't have a great PC, it's awesome for that. VR chat using only the headset version is still really, really good. But if you do have a good PC, you can use the PC graphics, and it works phenomenally. And I would just honestly I can't see why you wouldn't. It's such a good price point for all the capabilities. It even has full hand tracking without controllers. I don't know of any games that actually support that yet, but maybe VR chat will get that someday. And if it does, I'll be able to bend my pinky by itself. Right now, that's not possible, but hey, maybe you never know. Maybe in the future. And yeah, so I'll stop rambling. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You get to see a little bit of what it looks like, kind of through the game itself. These are the, I mean, you're seeing me, but it's the same visual quality through the headset. So. Um, yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.